Hi, everybody. My name is Keith Blackmore. I'm one of the producers for the Spark Animation Festival. Today, we're talking about what makes an animated film great. And obviously, there's a lot of factors, including concept and artwork and animation, but there's something about that film that just manages to make them better, that catches our particular interest, that achieves that rare sense of essence that we return to these cartoons over and over again. That makes them really great. And of course, there's many cartoons that have been made over the years, both shorts and features, independent and studio. But it's interesting to hear what each individual considers their great film, what they go to, their go-to film. So we've invited a bunch of great animators here from the industry to discuss their favorites. We have Tom Sito and Bob Kurtz and Jake Friedman, Marv Newland, and Eric Goldberg. Tom, maybe tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I started in New York City in the 70s, and I had a chance to work for Richard Williams on a little film called The Adventures of Raggedy Ann and Andy, and that's where I met Eric just before that and all, and I've been an animator ever since, and worked on a bunch of films like Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, and helped start DreamWorks and did Prince of Egypt and Shrek, and directed Osmosis Jones, which did so well I was soon on the street looking for work, and I've written a couple of books about the business, and I currently teach at the University of Southern California.
Awesome. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I don't have as nice a resume as Tom. It's weird to have to talk about yourself, but I went to Chouinard Art Institute. I was really fortunate. When I got out of school, was Teehee, my teacher and my mentor, brought me to Disney. So Disney was my first place of work where I was board director designer, and got to work with Walt and that, and then shortly kicked out, and I went on to design Alvin the Chipmunks and write on that show and a few other shows, and then I ran out of people to work for. I mean, I'd written the first year of the Pink Panthers, and so I started my company, Kurtz and Friends, and we were, what can I say, at the time, we were very successful. And there's a lot of things. The nice thing is that I've been able to work with some great, well, number one, great animation talents. Eric, Tom, they're all part of that. But I like to do comedy, so I got to work with the great ones. I worked with very closely with George Carlin, Lily Tomlin, Steven Spielberg, Mr. DNA, that kind of stuff. Won a Peabody with Lily, and hopefully still making images, still contributing, I hope.
That's awesome. Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I worked on these things.
Nice.
I started out as an animator working on this Disney project called Little Einsteins. I worked on this Nickelodeon project called Wonder Pets. I worked on Saturday Night Live briefly in a couple of movies. And then I phased that out and began writing. And I wrote this book, The Art of Blue Sky, wrote this book, The Disney Revolt, and this book, The Disney Afternoon, is going to be coming out in the fall of 2024. Fingers crossed. And yeah, that's me. I've been teaching history of animation at NYU, at FIT, at RISD, remotely. So now I pop up on some documentaries about animation history every now and again.
Awesome. Nice to have you with us. Marv Newland.
Went to Art Center College of Design, the Nazi training camp of art in Los Angeles as a child. made some live action movies, accidentally made an animated movie, tried to get work as a live action director by knocking on doors and saying, "Hi, I'm here to be a director." Failed. Got sent to Spumbuggy Works in Los Angeles. A guy named Frank Terry hired me. Met Mark Kausler, who taught me the history of animation and taught me to love animation, and ran into a whole bunch of people in the community and the industry that made me turned me into a lover of animation. Had to leave Los Angeles for many different reasons. Wanted to make movies with the National Film Board of Canada, basically. I wanted to make independent movies. Went to Canada, went to the wrong city, worked freelance for Sonera Productions, worked with one of the three founding animators of the NFB, Jim Mackay, at his little studio. Got tired of Toronto, moved west to Vancouver, did a bunch of freelance work, got sick of that. Opened up my own little company, International Rocket Ship Limited. Got some money to make some short films, did some commercials, ran into a lot of great talent, young, desperate people, took advantage of them. And they made good movies. I made a couple of good movies. We made a big, long movie with Gary Larson that won the Grand Prix at the Annecy Animation Festival. And basically I've rubbed shoulders with great people all my life. Animation people are the greatest. We're all fools. We all make movies one frame at a time. We're idiots. Everybody knows that. You can walk up to the greatest stars in animation, some of which are on the screen here today, and shake hands and gab with them and so on. It's a great world to be in. I'm so lucky not to have become a damn live action director.
Oh yeah, you're here to that.
Yep.
Eric Goldberg, our guest.
Hi. Well, my starting story was exactly like Tom Sito's. We both started in New York in the 70s. We both worked on Raggedy Ann and Andy. And from there, Richard Williams became my mentor. And I went to his London studio to do commercials and work on The Cobbler and the Thief between commercials. Eventually opened my own studio called Pizzazz Pictures, which was a term nobody had ever heard in England before. Hello, it's just Pizzazz Pictures. Anyway, in any event, Disney eventually came calling, and my first Disney gig was animating the genie on Aladdin, and along with Tom, who was also on the unit, God bless him. And I've continued at Disney doing lots of other stuff, co-directed Pocahontas, directed 2 pieces in Fantasia 2000. Most recently, I was the hand-drawn animation director on Once Upon a Studio, Disney's 100th anniversary short. And I'm still there, and I'm still using pencils. What do you think?
I love it. Yeah. Nothing like
Can I add to that? This guy also is the greatest animator of our time.
Oh, stop.
It
All
really
right.
is.
We're blessed to have you with us, Eric. You know, I've got everybody's choices here, and they've all sent in, selection of that. But I never heard yours, Eric.
No, I didn't know if I was supposed to make any choices. I thought we were just going with Bob's. So there we go.
Wait, please.
Okay.
If you had a top 5 shorts, features.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, first things I can think of are usually Warner Brothers cartoons. I would say Duck Amuck might be top of my list.
Yeah.
Hublies are top of my list, like The Adventures of Asterisk.
That's a good one. Yeah.
And Tender Game, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd probably also throw Rabbit of Seville in there. and actually, there's a lot of them on Bob's list that I would have, and particularly Rudy Toot Toot. I think it's one of the best films ever made. As you can tell, I kind of like the Hubblies. So
Yeah,
On and Faith, yeah.
it's not a bad thing.
But you're talking about when they were at UPA, right? Not when they're independent studios.
well, no, because
Yeah.
you know, they made Tender Game and Adventures of an Asterisk, you know, independently. That was through Storyboard. So that was when John was gone from UPA.
Yeah, I love Duck Amuck, the play that it has there with Daffy. He's such a serious character coming in there to do the serious role. After all, this is a Warner Brothers cartoon, and we have to be serious here. But continually changes and the setting, and he's always reacting. And it's a great example of reacting to that situation, the action and reaction of a character. Observations that you've made on that?
You know, first of all, this is the first Warner's cartoon when I was very young that made me laugh out loud. It just is so damned funny. And just watching frustrated Daffy in, you know, at you know, at the expense of the unseen artist was such a great premise, you know. And you know, they turned him into all sorts of different things. You know, they turned him into this flubadub character. It's like, I don't feel like myself today, you know.
I feel all right.
It's crazy, but Daffy remains Daffy Duck. And what I love about it, not just is it plays with the medium in a lot of ways. One thing that it plays with is the fact that it is drawings. It's like, you know, he asks for a background and they draw this stupid, crude 1920s background behind with an auto with the steam coming out of the radiator. And it's bizarro. And I just think it's an absolute animation masterpiece that's entirely aware of itself the whole time.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of it that makes it too is it that they have such defined characters. We know Daffy's character so well, and he's trying to suppress that anger and be that good guy as he goes out. But all those incidents just leave him boiling and boiling and boiling until he finally explodes. Yeah, we see.
I was just thinking about you know, as Eric was describing it, but you know, recently there's been a whole like sort of a lot of stuff in the media about one of the top movie executives was saying the problem with our movies is there's not enough executives, and I was just trying to imagine if they had that situation in Chuck's time, Chuck trying to explain Duck Amuck.
Yeah.
And get notes.
I mean, you know, the beauty of Leon Schlesinger in his time was that Schlesinger kept the main studio away from the animation studio. Like all Warner Brothers knew was every 6 weeks they got a short, you know, and they were happy, you know. And there was a story about how they actually had like a dummy Bugs Bunny storyboard of a film they never intended to do, but they would leave it in the conference room. So when Leon would bring executives around, he'd go, "This is our next short," you know, and he already knew his spiel, like how to do it and all, and you know, and they walk away happy, and they leave them alone, you know, which is great. You know, so.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Tom. You know, they were always, you know, the artists were always at war with Schlesinger. You know, so I remember Chuck telling me that I think, you know, the short that had the bull in it, the bullfighting, and they were just sitting there. I think he was sitting there with Mike Maltese, and Schlesinger roars in the room and says, "There's nothing funny about a bullfight." And he went out and they said, "Well, he's never been right before." So he went out and made this great short.
I'm just going to add to that for a second. That was probably Eddie Seltzer during that period. So, and I think there were two periods of Warner's. One was the Leon Schlesinger period where he pretty much left them alone so that he could go on his yacht. And then there was the Eddie Seltzer period where they did the exact opposite of whatever he said. And I think both periods were very fertile for those artists.
Yeah, it's like when they invented Pepe Le Pew, and Eddie said, "Absolutely not, no skunks." And Chuck said, as soon as he said that, I know we had to do it. So, won an Oscar.
I think anything by Chuck Jones is my favorite. That's what I would have to say. You mentioned as well, Eric, you mentioned Rabbit of Seville. I can't listen to Rossini's Barber of Seville without the imagery in my head of Bugs Bunny.
Me neither. My wife Susan's always embarrassed when we go to the opera because I'll start singing it, but in Bugs's voice. But anyway, I love Rabbit of Seville. It is one of the greatest musical cartoons ever made. Now, there are great animators who did things to music, and I love animating to music. Certainly the Hubley films to jazz tracks and things like that. But what amazes me about Rabbit of Seville is the precision with which it is made. It is timed and staged so beautifully, not to mention the beauty of the animation. One of the animators who worked on Raggedy Ann and Andy, Emery Hawkins, actually worked on Rabbit of Seville. He did the famous "What would you want with a rabbit" stuff, where he's dressed as the senorita, and it's marvelous animation, absolutely gorgeous. And I think that might be my top musical animation film. It's just done so beautifully. I use it in classes when I'm teaching to tell people about how to animate to music, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a few thumbs up that are agreeing in this group here. Yeah.
Yeah, I would put that above What's Opera Doc.
Me too.
No shade at What's Opera Doc, but
I agree.
just think it's
I would agree, Jake, in that regard. Yeah, and yet a lot of people rate it so highly, but for its own reasons and such. You mentioned as well that it's such a great piece of musical animation, but we don't often talk about Chuck Jones as being a great director, and it's so concise. That film is just so concise, and I think this is what's great about animation is that they're working frame by frame, and he knows just how many scenes or how many frames to make this scene and such. And I think that's a big part of it, that it couldn't have been done in any other medium, of course, but in the hands of Chuck Jones, it just rises to the top as far as a great short.
Well, Chuck was always very precise. And I think that's one thing that really sets him apart. Now, Friz Freleng was also very precise in his musical cartoons, and he was great. But I mean, Chuck was always the kind of guy who said, you know, the difference between a laugh and not a laugh is one frame, you know, and he really was that precise in his heyday.
Yeah, I was going to add, you know, Chuck would love to talk about, you know, like when the coyote falls, you know, and when he falls, he disappears and he said, we tried 16 frames, pause, 18 frames, it was 17 frames was the right, and is having that feeling of what's funny, you know, and silence really helps comedy, you know. So
I heard it was 32 frames.
I heard 14.
Well, you heard it twice.
Chuck probably said it several different ways.
Yeah. It's interesting that I remember talking to Benny Washam, who was one of Chuck's like main animators, and Benny was saying that and on some of the Bugs and Daffy, you know, duels, you know, the shoot him now, don't shoot him now, shoot him now, like that. They would have a contest to see how long he could hold a pose and still be funny. So it's like after about the third or fourth time Daffy gets his beak blown off by Elmer, he walks up to Bugs and goes, just to see like how long can I hold this and get a laugh.
He just rolls up those, that's the class with all comedy. It's about that, right? Isn't it? So Bob, you were mentioning earlier, we were talking about your favorites. You had your top favorite is UPA, John Hubley's Rudy Toots.
Well, I didn't do it in order. What I did is I'm just remembering I picked shorts because I thought for your purpose most of the features would be seen by whoever you show it to. they will have seen Dumbo or Pinocchio or, my favorites. Sometimes they don't see the shorts. And so I went through, and it wasn't necessarily in that order. In fact, the Daffy Duck one that Eric mentioned was in my short list, because I had a short list of about 8 or 9, and then I cut it, and I basically 4 comedic, and 1 just has always moved me as a short. So, but there isn't particularly an order. It's just I wrote them down. That's it.
Hey, just got to welcome Willie Ito to the group here.
Hey, Willie.
Really?
Sorry, I'm so
Hello.
late.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
California.
Well, that's because you're in San Francisco.
You're playing football this afternoon. What's going on?
All right.
Oh, so here I am.
Thanks
Better
for
late
joining
than
us.
never, I guess.
Always. Glad you're here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. Glad you made it.
Thank you, guys.
So Bob was just talking about so then, not in sense of order, then what would be your favorite film, Bob?
Well, I don't have a favorite. We can start with Rudy Tutu.
Yeah.
And because, like Eric was saying, films, particularly the shorts, that influence you, that make really deep impressions. Rudy Tutu made a major impression on me. Now, and I mentioned this earlier as we were just talking back and forth, but I went back to look at, the choices that I made of the films of what I remembered. And I wanted to look at them again, and they were, to me, even better than I remembered. There was something, they stay there. I hate to say it, timeless. And so go back to Rudy Tutu. Of course, it's John Hubley, but what it showed me was how you could use the dance in a film. They had a ballet dancer that John had, that he posed.
Yeah.
Then they do, so that I love motion. I love movement. Animation is the dance, but it's not the imitation of live action. It's not rotoscoping. It's not CGI, doing it with little light bulbs all over, because you can do it. It's the imagination and the rhythm to the music. And when you watch, whatever it is, Dishonest John or whatever is the lawyer move.
Yeah.
Wow. And the way they posed, Johnny's all, kind of slimy and bent over in that. The act, or what they call limited animation, is perfect. And they all have these movements. The storytelling is so rich in the way it tells it. The use of color. Now, it's hard when you look at it on YouTube, because it was shown in the theater in those close values, often unused colors working together. I think it's Paul Jr., I'm not sure, but boy, oh boy. And the so-called flesh tones, they aren't flesh tones, and they change, and they do. It's so much imagination, but since I try to get into dance as often as I can. If I can put a dance number in a film, and when I do my film titles and stuff, I've done it. And like Eric and I did Pink Panther, and Eric did this amazing dance where we have Clouseau and the Panther dance a tango, and they're real steps. That's the thing. Exaggerated, beautifully done. But there's those steps, because I wanted the two dancing together. And the tango, essentially, I use a lot of dance stuff, but the tango, the partners don't look at each other. So now you have these two people, the Clouseau trying to get the Panther, but they don't look at each other all through the dance until the very end. So going back, and that it was sort of a license to start, watching this film, a license how to move, or that you don't have those limitations of even how the body is hinged. You can have double knees, you can have that, you know, it's and it's so married to the music and the score, and it's such a delight. And you know, Frankie is always on her toes, and you know, and it's just, you know, it's like Nellie Bly comes to the, you know, the stand, and when it gets yelled at, she all wrinkles up and she has to move her, you know, the wrinkles down. So inventive. So anyway, love, you know, I love that film, and it stayed with me. But the first time I saw it, I went, you know, it's like a double wow. You know, Eric, you know the feeling. You see something, and it's like somehow it's yours. You know, you know what I mean is you're going to build on that.
Yeah.
You're not going to copy it, but you'll build on that. You've been given, as I said, a license to go in that direction.
You know, one thing I'd like to add, and I absolutely agree with Bob on everything, is it was one of Art Babbitt's career best pieces of animation.
Yes.
You know, oh my God, you're talking about, you know, Frankie entering on point, you know, as she's walking in. That's beautiful. You're talking about the lawyer. It's, you know, it's interesting because he's using dance in the lawyer to make him a pontificating blowhard. And that's pretty amazing that you can have somebody, you know, exude that personality, but he's doing it through dance steps as well. And that's astonishing.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I want to add one thing, which again, the, you know, the tracks, and later on the films I picked, I've always, when I teach, you know, I talk about the track is half the film. Now I'm visually oriented, but every director pays as much attention, you know, to the sound as to the visuals and where. And this is a musical number, and it's a well-known number, and it's a well-known song. And so they're going through it, and as the crooked lawyer's there, and Nellie Bly walks by, bam, silence.
But it's the eye.
It stops. They do the eye thing, very little. Talk about understatement, overstatement, and then goes on, and the music goes. You know, it's the opposite where we do what's called Mickey Mouse music, and live action does it, where they, you know, they want you to feel sad, so the sad music tells you what you should be feeling. You know, all that, which I really hate any film that musically tells me what I should be feeling. I'd love it if they suddenly cut the music or do stuff or just counter, or some of those great films where you don't even know there's music because it slips in and out. But that moment, again, I refer to silent. You got a thing going. It's wonderful, and the transitions with the bartender. You know, he's on the stand, he's in the bar, you know, rubbing. I mean, it's wonderful.
You know, one thing that will probably come up several times today is it's a great example of the power of a single drawing in many instances in Rudy 2-2. When you cut after the lawyer gets murdered and you cut back to Frankie, one drawing of her holding the gun.
That's right.
And then Exhibit A is dangling from the nose of the gun. And it's like, and it's such a perfect, strong drawing. You don't need to animate it. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. You know, by the way, at that time, and with the double hand going out in films, they used to shoot with one hand. It wasn't like later in all the television mysteries, you always do now two hands.
Yeah.
One hand is always what it was done up to whatever, 60s, 70s, 80s. So that is a really clear statement, you know. It's not often used.
Yeah, I always like the pose though, like when Frankie's at the bar and looking disgusted, and before the bartender says he you know, he's in back and already, just her one single pose, you know, that one kind of, you know,
that fed up look.
It says the whole thing. Yeah, you don't need you don't need a lot of animation there. It works.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I'm done.
Okay, I was gonna say another a timing thing with the silence is when she shoots the gun, and he runs all the way, he runs is at the door. He looks and the bullets are going beep, beep, and that's so fast. And then and then there's this pause. Boom. It's like it didn't go bing, bing, bing. There's a pause in there. These are for timing, and pretty much good animation is all about timing.
Yeah, I think just to say too, like for students and all, none of this is accidental. It doesn't just happen, and everything. This stuff is meticulously planned out.
Yeah.
And Eric and I have talked about it. The old thing about exposure sheets, where we had sheets with every frame marked, and as a director, you time it. I mean, animation directors, it's not known that much that you use it over the movie reel or editing, that you're cutting a frame or doing that. You pretty much are on, and then you edit if it needs to be finessed, but that's probably all time on an exposure sheet in the director's mind. And as a director, as we do it, it's a wonderful thing to be able to take an exposure sheet, right, Marv, and you write it out, and that timing works. You're not doing it after the fact where you shoot it and then say, okay, this is what I want. No.
Yeah. Let's take a minute and introduce Willie. Willie Ito, welcome. Joining.
Sorry, I was a little late.
That's okay.
No, I'm only kidding.
We've already been discussing the best of Warner Brothers, but I'm going to ask you, because I know I have a feeling, if anybody asks you, what's your favorite animated films, what would it be?
Well, of course, it has to be One Froggy Evening.
Oh,
A Michigan Frog. And at that time, I was assisting Ken Harris, who was the go-to guy. Chuck would always assign Ken the great dancing scenes, like, for instance, What's Opera Doc and whatever. So fortunately, I had a chance to work on some of Ken's real classics. And people would often ask me, what was my favorite? And they would assume, well, you started on that iconic spaghetti scene in Lady and the Tramp, so that's got to be your favorite. And I would go through a list of characters that I worked on, and then I have to really focus in on J. Michigan Frog. He was fun to draw and fun to work on. And of course, while we were working on it, if we didn't see the entire the storyboard or the daily addition to the pencil test, you were sort of lost. But then when you see the finished film and then just sit down and analyze it, you go, wow, that storytelling in pantomime is just beautifully done.
Well, you hit it. It's in pantomime. It's a silent film. That's the thing. These other characters, Daffy, Bugs, lots of dialogue, or at least some dialogue, but with it's just that visual storytelling works so well. Yeah, it's as good as any Keaton Chaplin film. Yeah.
I think one thing that's great about it being pantomime is how much they get across with manipulation of shape design, because basically the whole joke is he's frog shaped, he's man shaped, he's frog shaped, he's man shaped, and he turns on a dime whenever anybody has to look at him. And it's just really smart silent filmmaking, if you will.
Yeah.
And when you watch the film, the character that finds the frog goes into different metamorphoses. he gets tall, he gets heavy, he
Yeah.
shrinks, but it just fits the that particular feeling that the film was trying to convey with the frog. It's great.
You know, one of my favorite little things with the frog is the time when the guy can't get the frog moving, so he puts his fingers like this, and the frog is all really limp. And the idea of a limp frog with that, wonderful.
Yeah.
I use Ken Harris's walk, his hopeless walk at the end, as
Yeah.
an example
Oh,
in
yeah.
classes, because most walks you would have the passing position as an up and then the contact as a down. In this walk, to make him hopeless, the passing position is a down. So he's going hopeless,
Oh, okay.
hopeless, hopeless. And it's so good. And, you've got to think of outside the box, as, other than what would be realistic, what communicates that mood better. And Ken Harris did a marvelous job on that.
Certainly was, yeah. And of course, the other three animators on that was Abe Levital, Ben Washam, and Dick Thompson. And it was a great era because I was there from Termite Terrace, and having experience working in such a dump, having come from Disney, the state-of-the-art animation studio. And I walk in Monday morning. Corny Cole and I, we started the same day at Termite Terrace, and we walked in, and they had the good old-fashioned time clock where you put the card in there,
Oh, wow.
you pull the lever, and then we walk in, and it's stench because they had no central air conditioning. And back then, everybody smoked.
Yeah.
And then back in the 50s, they used to burn incinerators in the backyards.
Oh my God.
Hollywood was probably the worst place to be during the high smog era. So we would have to leave our windows open. So consequently, we were getting the smog coming in. And then, everyone smoked it at that time. And then our desk had regular light bulbs in it, not like the fluorescent we were used to at this.
So they got hot.
They got hot. So, every time you finished maybe 6 drawings, you had to turn it off and sit there and wait for it to cool off.
Yeah.
And consequently, when the scene was turned in with all the sweat, the scene was this thick at one end, and it was that thick with the other. It was a little bit getting used to with such a change of atmosphere, but then in retrospect, I'm thinking, I'm so glad that I was there to experience the infamous Termite Terrace.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Willie. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that's a classic, that's for sure. Classical instructor as well, that film.
Peter, are we scheduled to go till the end of the hour? Because I have a hard out at the end of the
Okay,
hour.
well, let's bring. I was just bringing you in, Jake. So, if you have to skip out, that's fine. So, Jake, you sent me a few selections: your classic feature, your TV specials, your cartoon shows, shorts, and even independent NFB stuff. Which one would you say is your favorite?
I'm not going to go down the usual route and say Disney, Warner Brothers, because we all love them, we all know them. But I'm going to go to Bruno Pozzetto in Italy and say Una Vita in Scatola, Life in a Box, or Life in a Tin is really one animated cartoon that changed my life. It changed how I understood what an animated cartoon could be, and what you can encapsulate in a story, and what all this time thinking about what an animated cartoon should be or should look like, and he just kind of broke the rules with that. And it's still kind of Like he talks about an existential understanding of the human experience, and he makes you laugh, and he uses color and shape and form, and he tells a whole life from birth to death in a 6-minute cartoon
Yeah,
with
yeah.
irony and charm.
And it's
Well,
all in long shot.
Yeah, yeah. Those really long shots with like little human going zzz, to
Mhm.
work, back home, work, home, work, home. I'm like, every year, whenever I watch it, I'm like, oh my God, am I closer to that reality? I hope
Yeah.
not.
Well, some of you know Bruno and spent time. I know Marv, Tom,
Yeah.
and you might. I had the.
recipe from I got a recipe from him from my cookbook. So
Oh, did you? Where's
pasta and garlic sauce. Yes, pretty good.
I had the privilege of interviewing him earlier this summer, and what a great time. But yeah, I mean, so many films that he has, and I think what comes to mind with Bruno is Grasshoppers, of course, and his feature Allegro El Troppo. So yeah, some really great stuff coming from him as well. You must have a Bruno story, Marv.
What year was it? One year, the Annecy Festival invited everybody who ever won a Grand Prix to come free and stay at the festival. And they put us up at this beautiful hotel, but it was way up the lake toward Italy. And Bruno was there, and Paul Driessen, and a bunch of other people that won. Anyway, we were stuck there, and the buses went on strike.
Oh,
And Bruno was the only animator there who had a vehicle. So we all piled into his, I don't know what it was. It wasn't a Lamborghini. It was probably a Mercedes or something. But anyway, there were about 10 animators in this car with Bruno driving and talking and turning back over to the back seat down these windy roads. And we all luckily made it to Annecy, but no one wanted to ride back with him.
Hey, now while we have you, Marv, you mentioned Paul Driessen, and I know Paul's on your list, and of course he's a
Yep.
great friend of yours. You mentioned his film of what? No, no, what is it? Oh, what
a night!
Oh, what a night!
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so, am I going to talk about it?
Sure, go ahead, please pick it up.
Okay, I thought Jake was going to roll on a little bit here because he had to bail. Okay.
I mean, I could name a couple others. I could name.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, there's the Red Baron sequence from Charlie Brown. I think it was first used in It's a Great Pumpkin. It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I think it was reused after that. But just that sequence that Bill Melendez did with Snoopy and the different colored backgrounds, and then like the color palette for Snoopy, and there's no dialogue in that either. But it's like modern art in motion. It's just beautiful, and also influenced the way I learned what animation could be, kind of breaking the rules in its own way. Like there's no reason why the color palette should be the way it is. It just is. And I think it's art in its purest form. It's breaking the rules and making new ones, and it's keeping you entertained.
Yeah. You mentioned also Ryan by Chris Landreth.
I love Ryan.
Ryan Larkin. And
yeah,
many of you probably know the story with Ryan Larkin from National Film Board and his great film Walking, and amongst others. But yeah, what made you choose Ryan?
like it, I don't know. Like I love to laugh. I love the funny cartoons. I love all the cartoons that are everyone's favorite funny cartoons. But Ryan by Chris Landreth spoke to me about, I think, what it means to be an artist, and it's kind of a mini documentary. The filmmaker Chris Landreth takes audio interview with his interviews with Ryan Larkin, and Ryan Larkin has kind of like gone down a really dark path at that point. He was a star of animation in the late 60s, early 70s, and then he's found at like in this place for people who have addiction, and it's just a very raw and honest film with lots of different Easter eggs if you watch it.
Yeah.
over and over, you discover more and more things about this film. It really stands the test of rewatching. And I think throwing no shade at Lorenzo, the Disney cartoon that was submitted for the Oscars that year, I think Ryan deserved to win.
Yeah. And I love the style that Chris did it in. This because it's not as though we see him as a human, but all his emotions are on the surface instead of hidden down below.
Yeah, all
Yes.
our wounds. It's like a world in which all of our wounds are
Exactly. Because he says that, doesn't he? This is from 1967 and this is from 1971 and all that emotion, pardon me, I thought it was very clever in how he conveyed that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, I don't know, I think it makes it like a great argument that like you never know what sort of invisible emotional wounds people are carrying with them.
That's exactly it. Yeah. NFB has done so many great films over the years. Yeah. So
absolutely love NFB.
Yeah. You mentioned also Pinocchio, which a lot of people mention. And I know you didn't want to get into Disney and such, but Pinocchio, for many, many reasons, what bothers me most today is that everybody considers it, oh, it's just a children's film, but it's not. It's not a children's film.
No, it's an epic. It's a film noir. It's an adventure film. It's like all these different films, kind of like a serial. Like each segment doesn't really connect to the next so much, but there's some terrifying moments, like the little donkey boy Alexander. Like, I still worry about this kid. You all know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it has these really dark moments, and then you have these really wonderful sing-songy moments that just have these wonderful songs that I do actually like more than most of the songs in Snow White. Not to compare and contrast, but I just love Ain't Got No Strings. When I was a little kid, I just would sing that all the time. And When You Wish Upon a Star is timeless.
Right. Yeah. I think Snow White is much beloved as their first feature, but I think the better film is Pinocchio.
I think so. And I think it sort of like set the trope in motion of having every Disney main character have a animal sidekick. Snow White had like the animals of the forest, but here we have like an actual cricket sidekick who's kind of like the Greek chorus of the film. And that became a wonderful and successful trend for every Disney film ever since.
Yeah.
Great
I'm
voice.
gonna throw in something
Great
here
voice.
that sorry.
Ukulele Ike.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that
Ukulele Ike sang songs like, I'm a bear in a lady's boudoir, and he was the voice of Jiminy Cricket.
I think I'd like to throw in about Pinocchio that one of the reasons why I listed it also is that we're living in an age right now where there's a sameness to a lot of animation. A lot of movies you look at and stuff, everybody's kind of moving the same and everybody's kind of acting the same and the designs look the same, and what's great about Pinocchio is that the individual performances, like Stromboli just by himself and everything, that's acting. It's not just making the artwork move from point to point and relying on the dialogue to be entertaining. It's the acting is terrific in it, and the acting of Honest John is terrific, and when Frank Thomas was doing I Got No Strings to Hold Me Down, it looks like a shy little boy embarrassed to be on stage, but then he does moves that are a wooden puppet, things that only a puppet could do, and he's balancing them both. And it's not just the design, it's the motion itself, the performance that's really key. And that inspires, so many artists of my generation, I know, that to look for it just beyond just like making things move from A to B, but actually to create a physical performance in your animation.
Right.
I want to add, I had a family tradition at Thanksgiving, every Thanksgiving for my kids and my family, I would show Dumbo. Every Christmas, I showed Pinocchio. And not, because I loved it. And the thing about Pinocchio is from Snow White in such a short period of time, It went to great character animation,
Yeah.
great, and that jump, that leap should be a decade or two, not
Yeah.
just a matter of 3 or 4 years. I mean, they move so fast. So hey, I'm with you, Jake. It's
Yeah.
a great film.
One
When you
thing I
think
love
about
about
it- Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Derek, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing I love about Pinocchio, which I wish modern Disney films would take note of, is its construction. And you touched on it, Jake. It's episodic and it works because you don't have to track every single character all the way from frame 1 to the final frame at the end. It's like a Charles Dickens novel. It's like Nicholas Nickleby. Your core is Pinocchio and Jiminy, and they meet all these interesting people and interesting situations along the way. But you don't have to introduce the coachman from frame 1. You don't have to introduce Stromboli from frame 1 and track them through the entire movie. But what it does is it gives you scope through the characters you're concentrating on. You're watching what they go through, and it's a great way to actually construct a movie. I wish we'd do more of it.
I just want to circle back with Bob's comment and as well, like that period of time. When you think, here's Steamboat Willie, 1928, and then here's Fantasia, 1940, 12 years. The artistic leap that they make from in that period. And of course, as you mentioned, Snow White, Pinocchio, Dumbo, Bambi, all in there, and Fantasia. So yeah, what they did.
Then came television.
then came television. Oh, yeah.
If it wasn't for, if TV didn't exist, the next 12 years, we would have seen incredible stuff on the screen from those animators who had honed their craft, working every day, seeing their results. How long can you make, how long can you keep a character frozen on screen? What can you do? Tear a character apart, put it back together. Explosions, whatever, kisses, all the stuff they were doing would have gone in, if no TV, if it was just theaters and they kept making the cartoons in the 60s, we would have been seeing amazing pictures.
Amazing.
It can never happen. Sorry, but it could never happen.
We've got to say goodbye to Jake. Thanks, Jake, for joining us.
I wish I could stay. I'm having such a ball. It was so nice to see my friends Tom and Eric and Keith again. So great to meet Bob and Marv and Willie, the legends in this room. I wish I could stay. So I hope to see you all soon again. I'm over on the East Coast, so maybe on my next trip out west.
Thank you. We're
Love to see you.
Conversation.
Love to see you.
Yeah, great to see you.
Take care,
Bye.
Jake. All right.
So let's circle back now. Marv, we were talking about Paul Driessen, and you're the film that you selected with Paul. What was that one? Oh,
What a Night.
Oh, What a Night. Tell us about that. What made you select?
Paul's actually made more short films, independent short films, than probably anybody on earth. Can anyone correct me on that? I don't know.
Over 300?
What?
Over 300, would you say?
Oh, no. I don't think he's made 300. He's made 50.
Oh, okay, because I was thinking like
Films.
Rosetto has made so many that as well. That's why.
Yeah, but not all by himself.
No, that's true. You're right.
Okay. Anyway, I could name a number of other examples, but Oh, What a Night has great dramatic structure to it. With poor Knight just wants to get with this woman, and she wants to be involved with the knight, not this guy that's inside the knight. And she gets attacked by the dragon. The knight saves her. She's loves the knight even more. And then in the middle of the most dramatic part of the movie, where the knight comes out of his armor and she's being threatened, and the knight is clinging to a cliff and scooting along, and Paul cuts to like another movie of somebody creeping along a big building in a city, and you follow them around the corner and back to Oh What a Night. The knight shows up behind the dragon with a sword, and I mean it's just like a brilliant moment. There's another picture he made, Home on the Rails, where a woman sitting on a chair, and you see a house with two doors, and she's sitting on the left side of the screen, and gets off the chair and starts walking to the right and disappears. And in the time it would take to walk to the right, then she reappears. And everybody in the audience cracks up, especially animators, because they know, why show her walking, you know? Just show the time it takes. And the Oh What a Night scene is equivalent to that. That just stop the movie you're making and go to another movie for a moment. It's like saying, these are movies, you know, and
we're just making a movie fun, folks. What I like with Paul as well is he's so recognizable by that line, that squiggly line of his. It's so distinctive. And again, I have to, thank Spike and Mike for making them known to us, because for me, it's like, we never saw those artists, those animators from Europe. And
National Film Board had this picture.
The NFB for sure. Yeah, those ones. But he opened up a world of animation, that's for sure. Now,
I'd like to talk. Add one more thing about Paul. I mean, it's making these comedic personal films. It was his the moment it starts. It's his. But and I love when often he would split the screen. Land, sea, and air, and that, and he'd have three films going on at the same time, but at times they interact with. I mean, just amazing mind. But I, at one point, knowing Paul, we were talking, and he said something to me I had never heard before, because you're talking about writing a film, and he says, "I write my films. I first think of an ending, and then I write how to get to the ending." I've never heard anybody but Paul talk about that's how he makes his films. But I thought that's kind of unique. I don't suggest it. But it's definitely a Paul thing.
Let's build a joke. Okay.
He's just written his autobiography. A couple of days ago, I sent him some stills that he wants to have for the book.
Oh, great.
I think he'll probably sell about a dozen copies.
That's awesome. Now, in these lists, I also saw Frédéric Back mentioned a couple of times.
Yes.
And he went up there's not just Crack, but also The Man Who Planted Trees. But I think anything by Frédéric Back, in my own personal opinion, I know I love The Man Who Planted Trees. Tom, you selected The Man Who Planted Trees. What makes you select that, and what makes him stand out as a favorite film?
Yeah, I was there. I was at the premiere at Annecy in 1987, and it was all in French. And like, my French is terrible, so I'm sorry. But even living in Toronto for 3 years, my French didn't improve. But what's interesting, I mean, it's just such a beautifully done film. And then to realize that he did it like almost by himself. I mean, he said that, he goes, "Oh, I had an assistant." And I go, "Yeah, all that drawing, all that."
Yeah, for about 6 weeks.
Yeah. It's just so beautiful, and a lot of it with one eye, because he lost a vision in one eye, and just a Herculean effort that, and just the technique is so beautiful. And he himself was so modest about it all the time. He loved to tell this story, because the next day we all had lunch together, and I was saying that, even though I didn't understand the French, I followed the story perfectly. Like, I understood the whole thing, and like, everybody's weeping at the end, like everybody's crying when the thing's over. And Frédéric goes, "Yes, I remember I read the book by Jean Janot. I read the book and I cried. And then I read the book a second time and I cried." and I drew the storyboard, and I cried. And then I pitched a storyboard to the CBC, and I cried. And the CBC said, "What's that stupid old man doing crying up there?" He goes, "But you know, I got the money."
Well, I think everybody here, I don't know of one animator that doesn't love that film. And it's just on top of everybody's list. Yeah.
Can I add why? I mean, I love that, but why I added Crack.
Yeah.
Because Crack was I was familiar with him, and then when I saw Crack, it just knocked me out. It's basically a story of where a chair comes from, how do you make a chair, the life of the chair being broken, the chair involved with the family, all the way through, and at the end you want to cry. It's a memorial, or a memory, I should say, and it's so deeply, it's done so well. Now, one of the things is that I have many of his frosted cells, because he sends them to me, or send them to me. They're 6 feet, 6 feel. It's small. Now, he's self-taught animator. He's a wonderful artist, a watercolorist, and a painter, and so many things that he do. But he found that he could do it on frosted cell. And when you see Crack, particularly Crack, it belies, not only does he mix this color, and he has dances, and he has fantasy, like when they get drunk from the wedding and they go home, and in the clouds are the canoe, and they're rowing the devils with them as they go through the night sky. The great music that Norman Roger supplies, but the music of a time that's indigenous, the native Canadian music going in, the sound, which is so beautifully going there. And interesting about Crack is the one where he was working on, and he was really tired, and by accident he took a crayon where you spray. What happens is when you work with pastel on the cell, you work on the texture side, and then you spray it, and it goes clear, so you can lay it over something. And he sprayed it directly into his eye, and after 5 or 6 operations, he lost his eye. So Crack is, he gave it his all in one eye to do it, but it tells you it's all mime, no dialogue that's related, nobody speaks. The emotions, the style of the movement of everything, the use of, in the museum, where when they lock up, complete silence, and then you review the entire film. It's just, I got teary-eyed again at the end, and of course I always got teary-eyed with the Man in Planted Trees, when I was there, at the same time in Annecy when he showed it. And I remember watching it, and it was so beautiful, I covered one eye because I wanted to see what he saw, I mean, I couldn't believe how gorgeous, it is. I think we all love Frédéric.
Yeah. I know there's famously, there was the incident at SIGGRAPH in Los Angeles. I can't remember. I'm going to say 2010, and John Lasseter brought him there, and Frédéric Back there. He says, "This is the man who inspires me," because everybody's inspired by John and what he did with Pixar and all his shorts and such. But he says, "This is the man inspired." And then they showed the film, "The Man Who Planted Trees." And John famously said that there isn't another film in film history that'll stand the test of time like this film, more than any other film. And that's why it belongs on many people's favorite list, for sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
I just want to mention a little bit about Crack too, because I love that film as well. One of the things I find remarkable about it is its charm. It has tons and tons of charm, and he actually makes you care about the chair. The chair is the main character, and you're happy when the chair finds a home at the end. I mean, that's remarkable, you know.
Yeah, and the music, as you mentioned, Bob, like the Quebecois music and the fiddling and all that, and the local indigenous music, yeah, it just adds to it. That's a great example of how music can help drive the story as well.
Yeah, I mean, it opens with a mouth harp.
Yeah,
you know, and it I almost all really great films open quickly. You know, it used to be this thing where, you know, pet peeve of mine, where you go see a movie and you say it's slow. He says, well, you have to wait, you know, about an hour in it gets interesting. I don't want to wait an hour to get interested in a film, you know. And in a short film, all the ones, in fact, everything we mention grabs you immediately within 20, 30 seconds. I worked for a great, I forget his name, a film director, and he's also from the stage, and I was doing titles for him, and he said to me, you know, and he said this, it made me so aware, every film, you know when it's great in the first 5 minutes. And when you think of any film, you know right away you're watching something different. And I think that's respect for the audience. Don't hide it. You got to come on. You know, that's the thing. You got to get that audience's attention, whether it's a TV audience, a streaming audience, whatever. You got to come on and grab them, and then don't let go.
Yeah.
And of course, Frédéric, but going back to Eric, oh my God, the charm. Yeah. Oh, you know, the humanity. But if you know Frédéric, you know, Charles Sullivan used to describe him, you know, the author, as the nicest man in the world. You know, there's just he cared so much about the environment. He himself had grown 10,000 trees on his property. He had another property. He, you know, it wasn't like I want to save the planet. He was attempting to save the planet all the way up to, you know, the end of his life. He was so into preserving what we have, you know. So it's a great man.
To that point, that's one of the reasons why I show it, and he inspired me. We talk about these films, and for the most part, a lot of them are just entertaining, but this film is an inspirational film, and he's the reason why I'm a beekeeper.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And in fact, and I was working with the Vancouver Cherry Blossom Festival to use this film to help the city of Vancouver plant 120,000 trees in the city.
Oh.
And that was in 2011. They did that up until 2020. And in fact, the mayor of Vancouver, he planted 5 cherry blossom trees at City Hall dedicated to Frédéric Back, or Bach. So when does that happen? That's why I say film is more than just entertainment. It's an inspirational film. It moves people to action.
Yeah.
Very, very rare for a film to do that, let alone an animated short. Yeah. We were talking about Chuck Jones as a great director. I want to talk about Tex Avery, because many of his shorts are on your lists, and I know he's on one of my favorite. What do you got there? What do you have there, Marv? Oh, I can't see it.
It's king size canary.
King size canary.
I recognize the cat.
Marv will remember that when we used to get Bob Godfrey visiting, and Eric, he probably knew your days in London. We'd get him visiting here in Vancouver in the summertime. And that, I always remember that with Bob. That was, oh, there you go. Yeah. Bob's favorite film was King Size Canary. What makes that stand out for you guys? What makes King Size Canary stand out in the Tex Avery film?
I think for me, it's Avery's twisted logic that plays all the way through the entire film. Oh, of course, plant grow is going to make, you know, a canary grow huge, and you know, the mouse saying, I'm going to save your life. I've seen this picture, so I'm going to drink some of this stuff too. and then they get into a war at the end of it, and they're standing on the earth. And it's the most bizarre set of logic, and yet he follows it all the way through from beginning to end.
I take it to the natural conclusion.
Yeah.
The cartoon we've gone, and it's a simple premise. It's, if big is funny, bigger's even funnier. And then it's the typical chase cartoon. Cat chases mouse, mouse chases cat, dog chases mouse, mouse chases everybody. Somebody's always chasing somebody.
One of the animators told me that like Tex used to like to do this like story sessions that he used to call "Oh No" sessions, which is they'd all sit around and they spitball ideas and they throw and they say, oh, let's hit him with a piano, let's hit him with a stove, let's hit him with this, and it just keeps going. And then somebody goes, oh no, we can't do that, and Avery goes, it's in. Yeah.
He was all about the gag, wasn't he? It wasn't. Yeah. Now, Willie, did you work with Tex?
Not at MGM. I never worked there, but when he had Cascade Films, I did a little work with him there. Then when he went over to Hanna-Barbera, I was back at Disney, so never. But I did meet with him socially a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, what was his favorite bar? I like that, emphasizing a lot. Northwest Hounded Police as well. That's,
oh my God! Yeah.
With Droopy.
Yeah.
Deputy Droopy has some of the best gags ever. Like the Droopy's tongue coming out of the sheriff's office, way up into the mountains, with a piece of dynamite,
Talking about extreme shots, right? That wolf, and every time you see him, just like everything is just explode, the body exploding. And
there's also like a quiet moment where you can actually hear what Tex Avery really sounds like. He's, the little dog is patting the bottle and it's going, ow, 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 ow.
Yes.
And it's just Tex Avery's voice. It's not a character voice. It's just Tex.
When we were doing Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like Northwest Hounded Police was like our gospel, like watching it over and over again and slowing it down and looking, the timing of the takes, that when he would do that big take, how long he would stand there quivering. I think it was like 42 frames, but of a stagger, before back in, but it was wonderful.
Yeah, no, Roger.
There's a scene in Droopy's Double Trouble. There's Droopy gets his twin brother Drippy to come and help out at the house, and the dog is fooled because Droopy's kind and Drippy's not kind. Anyway, Drippy comes into the kitchen with a tray of food. Or no, it's Droopy comes into the kitchen with a tray of food. And looks left, looks forward, looks right. And it's like, boop, boop, boop. And it's 12, 12, 12. And it's so perfect. He's looking for Spike. He's looking for somebody. He's looking to see what's going on. And it takes half a second to do, beautiful.
Okay, this is an admission. I don't think he'd mind. But Roy Disney, Walt's nephew, told me what his favorite cartoon was, and it floored me. Red Hot Riding Hood.
Oh,
and he was so happy to get the Tex Avery Laserdisc set when it first came out. He was, so there you go. Well, Roy gave it his imprimatur.
Well, I've got them on film prints, and I love having Tex Avery film and playing them. But yeah, Red Hot Riding Hood. I mean, and the takes, talking about the takes and that, that must have been a good reference as well we know it was a great reference for The Mask, right, with Jim Carrey. Yeah. They borrowed that, they ripped it right off.
I mean, here's a great thing too, because I know like a lot of students are watching this program right now. It's like the way you learn animation is like you don't just watch a cartoon once and go, okay, that's it, I'm gonna go on to something else. And you got so many other things to do and all like that. You study these things. If Ken Anderson used to say, the Disney designer, he used to say, whenever I see a film I like, I watch it 3 times. I watch it once to get the plot over with. I watch the second time and look at cutting. I look at the third time and look at lighting and see how it's lit. So when you see something you like, take it apart. And I had an opportunity once to get a copy of Northwoods Hounded Police, and on reels. And back in the old days, and actually run it back and forth and slow it down and watch the movement. And I learned so effing much from slowing that thing down and studying it. And we all did it. Akira Kurosawa taught himself filmmaking by getting a copy of John Ford's Stagecoach.
Yeah.
And he says he watched it 50 times. He went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I mean, that's how you learn. When you see something you like, take it apart and go, why do I like it? What's good about it?
Yeah. And conversely, why don't I like it? The other side, why is this boring me? Why isn't it really my attention? So that also, you learn from that too. Bob?
I want to add to that. I teach a class in comedy staging, which I've done at DreamWorks and Disney. And it's to say to Tom, what I do basically, and I only show live action for animation, but what I do is I show visual comedic films and show them what is the director thinking? Why is he making that choice? Why is he doing that staging? Because it's something I just naturally do. And it is, if you really want to know, I mean, yes, you can enjoy a film once, but the other is, why did someone make those choices? Because all films are a series of choices.
Yeah.
Everything's a choice. And so you start to realize that, how important it is to get another perspective, not even as an audience, but as part of the person who's making the film. So I just wanted to add to that.
It's good. No,
I also wanted to mention, this is kind of esoteric, but I think it's kind of fun because it can go in reverse sometimes, the study as well. When Richard Pryor was coming to prominence in the 1970s, they did an interview with him in the New York Times Magazine. And the interviewer said, "Where do you get your timing?" And his answer was, Porky Pig, The Roadrunner, Baby Huey. It's all from the cartoons.
Oh,
and I just thought that was marvelous.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's true. It's true.
You win to hold it. That's awesome. What we haven't talked about, and I know it's on some of the lists, is the Fleischers, and especially the early Fleischers, like Bimbo's Initiation. That's just, man, if you know this one. You want to be a member? You want to be a member?
Yeah, I think in the 70s there was a guy at AFI magazine did an analysis of Fleischer humor called "Sex, Death, and Betty Boop," where he said, like, there are no jokes in Fleischer cartoons; they're just weird.
They really were. Some of them, like, you're right, surreal. They were examples of surreal animation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like to think the Fleischer humor came from a bunch of old Jewish guys sitting in a room going, "I think this is funny," But like you say, it's not actually a joke.
Yeah.
They were so distinctly different from what was happening in Hollywood from Disney and that, right? I mean, the New York sensibility, I mean, there you have sex and gambling and drugs. I mean, Minnie the Moocher, Betty Boop.
Right. Cab Calloway and Minnie the Moocher and great slop. Yeah, I mean, this kind of overlapping animation. And you talk about drugs and everything and so-called kitties,
Yeah.
Just wonderful.
Yeah, smoking hope.
My favorite Fleischer is the Betty Boop Snow White, which also has Cab Calloway as the basis, but it's got the most bizarre metamorphosis animation as Coco is singing St. James Infirmary Blues, and he's turning into the stuff in the lyrics. He's turning into a watch chain, he's turning into a bottle of booze, he's turning into all these things, and that's kind of essence of Fleischer for me, is that kind of weird metamorphosis that he did so well.
Yeah, the rubber hose animation too, that style of that day in that late 20s, early 30s through that 30s was great.
As a sidebar to Metamorphosis, I got to get Ted Eschbaugh's name in here, and his cartoon Goofy Goat, which to this day upsets me when I see it. There's a metamorphosis at the end of an accordion turning into a big kind of worm or something, and it goes out the theater. They're on stage and they go out the window, and everybody that's in the cartoon is riding on this accordion worm, and the hippos and Goofy Goat and everybody, and it's just the weirdest transformation. It's like, how do we get out of this movie? Oh, put everybody onto the accordion worm and send them off screen.
Naturally.
Well, I really was that, the Dali of the day, he was influencing the painting world, and they were being influenced by that painting world of that period.
That Goofy Goat leaves Dolly in the dust. I mean,
I remember back at HB, we were just basically doing Flintstones and Huckleberry Hound and the cartoony show. Then comes Johnny Quest. And so, of course, Bill and Joe, being old New Yorkers, Hannah was having a fit because Joe was quite a salesman. He could take a sketch made at Musso Frank's on a Friday afternoon cocktail and then slip that in his pocket and take a flight to New York for a meeting with the network and sponsors on Saturday, pull out this cocktail napkin, and then start winging it. And suddenly he sells a show. And so he'll get on the phone Sunday night and, hey, Bill, you better get another staff rounded up because I just sold another half-hour show. So now Hannah, he had no alternative than to call his old friends from Fleischer's and Terry Toons. They were all retired. And so he says, you got to help us out. Would you take freelance work and do it? And if any of you guys want to come out to sunny California, you're welcome to do that too. So now we had an animation department full of rubber hose animators. Then we sell Johnny Quest, Space Ghost, and all of these shows, and it was actually, we had no money for rotoscoping, so they had to animate. And these guys, maybe the best they did was animate Ray Spandon a la Popeye.
I would love to see Johnny Quest in the Fleischer style. I would 1930s rubber hose style. That would be I would love that.
So one of the alternative is to reach out to the comic book industry. And that's how we got people like Alex Toth and all the comic book guys that saved the day. But
I don't know. I think they missed an opportunity there.
I mean, I gotta say that I had a chance to work as an assistant at Hanna-Barbera in like 1978, 79, like that, and during its peak, of staff, and it was amazing just walking down the hallway. It was like animation history. It's like it was like a Noah's Ark of old animators.
Oh, God,
you walked in like, oh, there's Dave Tedler, who worked on Betty Boop and Jack Ozark, and there's Ken Harris, and there's Kenny Muse, who was like one of the great Tom and Jerry animators.
Oh, my God,
and Nick Nichols was a Disney director, and it was amazing. They were all just there and all playing poker at lunch. So it was fun.
Cool. Now, looking at the list as well, one of the films that a lot of people chose was The Big Snit, National Film Award with Richard Conde. Yeah. That's a classic film. Anybody want to pick that up and run with it? Talk about that? What makes it?
Okay, I loved it, and the thing about it is with Richard, again, here's a singular vision.
Yeah.
Talk about drawing funny, just funny. And then we go to the track. The track opens with a wet trombone playing like a series of farts.
Yes.
You know where you're going in. Then you see these two very strange characters in strange room with huge tires leaning against the wall and stuff. And you know, and it's the snit. The premise is a small petty fight over Scrabble while the world's coming to an end, and which is an interesting balance. And you know, and the guy's favorite show is
Sewing for Teens.
yeah, Sewing
Yes,
for
Sewing,
Teens.
sorry.
What a crazy title. It's not even like sewing anything.
And he's
Sewing
obsessed
for
with
Teens.
it too. He keeps
Yeah.
sewing the furniture.
Yeah.
I know, and it's got this, you know, even when he falls asleep, the main guy, his teeth flap. You know, they're like flat, and the way they move is, first of all, they have great voices speaking, overlapping dialogue, sound much more like people. Even the cat who bites into the wire is a guy yelling, "Hey!" You know, like this. You know? And then the wonderful, crazy stuff where he says, she's yelling at him, you know, "Stop sewing the table," and it's you stop shaking your eyes, lady. You know, it's like, and they each deny that they're doing it. It's just like petty, hysterical, yet so nice when they have to come together. It's just funny, original material. It's a funny vision, and I on all levels, and I can't do overseeing it, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, Marv, you know Richard.
I wrote him a letter today while I was on the ferry coming to Vancouver.
Yeah.
But I was talking about, I hate to say this, AI with him. As I'm writing, I have a collection of his letters. I mean, this is like a treasure trove. I have other letters. I have lots of letters. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying, if you could not get AI to produce a Richard Condie letter that he didn't write or put on paper. I mean, his stuff is not regular. It's all you've got to piece it together as you read the letter, right? It doesn't make any sense until you read 5 pages. Then you go, it's great. Anyway, his drawings are there. He'll stop a thought in the middle of the thought and start something else. He'll misspell things and then tell you that he misspelled it later on, and so on and so forth. Anyway,
What's he doing now? What's he doing these days?
I got in trouble because I thought he was not feeling well, and I encouraged people to send him notes. And he immediately thought that I was telling the world that he's dying or something. No, just give him a little, "Hey, Richard, you're the greatest," blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm not discussing his situation in public ever again. He's precious to me. I got to keep getting his letters, like I don't want to be cut off by Richard Condie.
I think you bring up a good point, Marv, about AI, because all of us are dealing with that hovering around these days. And I think, many animation people are actually in a good position to say, I don't think AI is going to harm what I do, because we're doing stuff that's not realistic. We're doing stuff that is imaginative or crazy or off the wall. And there's no way you're going to get a computer to repeat that. It's gotta come from humans. And, you know, I think AI will have much more of an impact on computer animation, on CG, than it ever will on drawn animation. That's my own humble opinion, but I think what you're saying about Richard's letters and AI really does extend to the whole hand-drawn animation industry.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I
I'll say about Richard, it's such a unique twist. You know, I've had conversations with Richard, and I asked him. I think the film's called Apprentice, but they
Great
all
movie.
speak. Yeah, and I said, how did you get that? That sound the way they, it's semi-dialogue and that. And he said, well, what we did, we all laid around on the, on the studio floor, put a towel underneath our neck, drank some water, and then gargled and talked. And it's like, a mind that says, okay, we're gonna invent it, talk about not AI. And Richard's such a unique that if you just use his characters, you got The Cat Came Back. And that is hysterical because it's not easy to do funny characters, which I would call well drawn. I mean, he draws funny. He thinks, I don't know, strange. I don't know. He's so good, Anyway, I just want to.
The Cat Came Back, Cordell Barker's movie,
Yes.
heavily influenced, of course, by Richard, and I think with Richard's voices somewhere in the
Right. The yelling and all that is standard, Richard.
Yep.
Well, there's something in that water in Winnipeg because both of them are from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and they're great for great animation out of Winnipeg. So yeah,
Winnipeg for a period of time was making the funniest cartoons, definitely in Canada and definitely for the film board, but maybe in the world for 2 or 3 years.
yeah. We've talked about our favorite cartoons. Then maybe let's talk about today's cartoons and animation. What do you think about? Is there anything? Let's not talk about the state of animation, but is there anything that you've seen recently? Any shorts, any features that pop out that stand out in the last little while that really resonate that you would share again and again? I mean, many of you have been on festival juries and such, so you have the opportunity to see lots of animation. Tom?
I would think I'm very impressed with the Spider-Verse films. Those ones. When I saw the first Spider-Verse one, I thought, oh my God, a film about comic books by people who like to read comic books, who actually enjoy comics, instead of just taking an actor and sticking him in tights, and covering him with CG. And the other thing that was fun was that instead of trying to do like sort of create a reality where Superman is throwing a battleship or something like that. It's like Spider-Man's doing his thing, but you're still aware it's a comic book. So he has like effects lines coming out of his head, and every once in a while you see the frame where they jump from one panel to another, or it goes graphic suddenly. Like all those little games they're playing and all are playing with the idea of like this is not a natural movie. You're reading a comic or you're experiencing a comic book while you're enjoying the film. And and that was so different than everybody else's. It's like it just kind of stands out.
Yeah. Willie, what about yourself? Have you seen anything that you've enjoyed recently, in recent years? Stands out?
Myself, me? Not really, actually. I initially enjoyed 3D animation, but it's gotten to a point now where it all looks the same expressions on the gals with their mouth and the way it's like, oh, enough already. I'd like to see a little more innovation, something a little more fun, like we used to do with 2D animation, and so I haven't really been watching, unfortunately.
No, I get it. Eric?
I'm going to go from left field. I loved Nimona I thought
Yes,
Nimona
yes,
was great.
yes.
You know, first of all, very clever story, quite an emotional story, but the character conception of her and the acting on her is amazing. You know, it's a leap forward for animation acting because of the personality that she has. You know, and I know a few people have said, "Oh, well, it's too talky." No, it's not too talky because that's who she is. You know, her brain is going, 200 miles a minute, and that is reflected in her expressions, in her poses, in her actions. But she's also vulnerable. I actually think she's a fantastic character conception, and they handled her very well in this offbeat story. And I loved it. I just thought it was great.
No, I'm with you. It
I
was,
haven't seen it.
Yeah.
yeah. It's on Netflix, Willie. If you want to see it, it's on Netflix. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
and
I think it's a good point that Eric is making also, and that is on, in this panel we're talking a lot about old 2D cartoons and all, but we're not dissing everything in 3D or saying everything CG is it isn't worth it, because there's a lot of really good performances in CG that have, like one of my favorite bits was in Toy Story 3, the one the one where they're in the furnace, when all the toys are in the furnace and they
Yeah.
die and they're burning and everything, and just the acting is so effing good in that piece. When Buzz looks up at Woody, I'm sorry, so Woody looks up at Buzz and they look each other in the eye and think, "This is it. We're gonna die." This is the end. It's so moving. And it's a and it's a computer, it's a CGI and animated film, but it's just the storytelling and the acting was so strong that you went with it.
to that point, I think for me it was Toy Story 2, Jessie's song,
Mhm.
and where she sings the song telling her about, and we see the journey from her with her owner as a doll, and playing out as she grows from a young child to college age, and she leaves the doll behind at the recycling depot. But it's so poignant, so moving, and what she tells. The song is obviously telling the story, and this is where this is a great example as well, where dialogue wouldn't have got it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was a song that really nails it, and only through that song you would have got that whole story in that. So, and yeah, CG, and it's very emotional and very moving as well. Yeah.
To add to that same kind of storytelling, again, I'm blanking out real quickly, but Pixar's film with the old man who goes away in a house in a balloon, that little sequence of the life and the loss all done is
that 8-minute
incredible.
The first 20 minutes of that film are brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then of course in the same film, no talking animals unless you put a special collar on him, and then he's pure dog, which I think is such a clever device. The whole thing, like, I don't know how many people say squirrel, because that, it's the essence of a dog. So yeah, there's so many good, contemporary films.
Yeah, I think Al Pacino was going to make a sequel to Scent of a Woman called Essence of a Dog. I think anyway.
But have you seen anything good, Bob? You chimed in with
Nimona, I loved the motion. I loved the storytelling. I liked and I'm going to say what Eric is saying, a strong feminine character who isn't, I wanted to say that has that narrow range of so many princesses, etc. So I want this. I don't know if I can get it. I'll get it. No, it's more like the Japanese films where the female leads are human and they have self-doubt and they have this and they go through it. So I like that. Spider-Man, I like, because I'm really into remind the audience it's an animated film by changing styles. I love changing styles. That's just something I like. So when I see it, I go, yeah. Suzume recently, Japanese film, is just charming as hell and inventive. Miyazaki's latest it's storytelling is like what, but it's his visuals. It's again, I'm so glad Miyazaki's around. You know, I mean, it's like it's an experience, you know. And of course, I go back to I love Spirited Away and Totoro. Those are great. So you know.
Yeah. I was just thinking of an anecdote with Nimona. Eric was, I don't know if you were at the world premiere at Annecy, but I was sitting with the crew and I heard a story. They were saying how a young woman went into Starbucks and they always ask you, what's your Starbucks name? What do you want for your cup? And she said, Nimona. And when the barista came back, he calls out, I'm not a girl, I'm a shark.
Love it.
That film, you know, that she what you get that, but yeah, it's obviously influencing a lot of people. Yeah, Marv, what have you seen lately? What's gotten your attention?
I'm mulling over a couple of things. Chris Hinton's movies. Lately, he's been working with a pianist, Eva Goyen, and she does these little pieces of music, kind of experimental keyboard music, sends it to Chris. He makes a piece of animation in his kind of sketchy style. He made Flux. Has anyone seen Flux? Flux. That thing, that was the welcome to the 21st century of 2D animation. Anyway, he's still kind of working in that style, but rougher and crazier. And he'll whip up 2 or 3 minutes of animation in a couple of weeks and then marry it to the music, send it back to Eve, and send her another piece of animation, and she sends him a piece of music. And they've been doing this back and forth. They're going to present it live in Montreal sometime, and I hope he lets me know about it. I'm promoting it for him. And the other person is a guy named Federico Gutierrez, who's a Mexican ex-student of mine, who made a picture called Burrow, Burrow, while he was at Vancouver Film School. It's as good as any student film I've basically seen. There's an exception to that, and I can't remember the name of the movie right now, but I will in a minute here. Anyway, he's down in Mexico trying to make more movies, and his style of animation is beautiful design and loose. He's got a monkey fetish going right now. Anyway, it's good to see older guys and young folks still, you know, breaking into new areas, especially 2D. You think 2D be wiped out by now? There's no place else to go, but they're finding places to go.
No, I agree, and I think this part of this discussion came up a little earlier. I think the secret weapon with people against AI, that's what it was talking about. AI is the secret weapon is hand drawn, and you do life drawing and you know, composition and all that and movement, doing whether it's a human or a quadruped. That's your secret weapon against AI. So draw. Yeah.
One of the things I tell my students too at the end of a class is to say, like, when people are saying like, oh, things are going to change, they're never going to go, but whatever. And I said, you know, when the digital revolution happened in the mid 1990s with like Jurassic Park and Toy Story, one thing everybody said was absolutely dead was stop motion. Everybody was saying, that's it. There's going to be no more claymation. There's going to be no more stop motion. You know, even Ray Harryhausen was despaired at one point and was thinking like, wow, this must be the end, you know, whatever. But, you know, today there's like more stop motion being done now than in 1950. There's like 4 features being done at any one time. And Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio was terrific. You know, like it was so well done, and it was different and fresh. You know, and like there's a thing when you talk about a handmade film, you know, that's just exceptional.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. They had 3 out of the 5 nominees for the Oscar were stop motion.
Yeah.
Dog
Yeah.
and Sister. They were all stop motion. Yeah. So, yeah, no, it reminds me of the days back when I talked to my students when photography came in, and they thought it would kill painting, the painting world.
Right.
How do we, right? Oh, painting's dead from now on, But no, it just shifted, it pivoted, it changed, right?
And I want to mention, about, stop motion. One of the greatest chase scenes probably ever done on film is in Wrong Trousers.
Trousers, yeah.
Yes.
That chase scene is beyond brilliant,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like you're going, what? I mean, it's incredible, and I just want to say, on Wrong Trousers, it's a suspense movie, and a mystery where you have 3 main characters, Gromit and Wallace and the stranger. Have you seen this chicken? As they put the poster out, and it's a penguin. And the penguin has hardly anything to emote with. So 2 of the characters are mute. And they convey one evil and the other one confusion and pain, the dog, and all the stuff. And they even slipped in kind of pseudo music like Vertigo, from Alfred Hitchcock in there. Stop motion is just, it's gaining and gaining ground and telling more and more interesting stories.
One thing I want to mention about Wrong Trousers is when it came out finally on VHS, there were a bunch of us who got together, and we thought, boy, the lighting and the composition's really great on this. So we watched it with the color turned down on the TV, and it plays like film noir. It's so great in terms of the lighting and the composition. It really tells the story that way.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, this has been a tremendous afternoon kicking around this idea. We could go on, and I'm sure we could have many other conversations about the state of animation and visual effects and AI and such. But it's been great just getting together and kicking around about these great films that we all know and love. So, any final comments? I'll give everybody an opportunity to say one final word before we conclude for today. Let's start with Willie. Willie, you have a final comment? And you have a film coming out. Hello, Maggie.
Yeah, it'll be in 2D, and it's currently in production in Florence, Italy, with some of Luca Ciarotti's graduate animation student, and then Tony Taratini in Toronto, Canada, from Sheridan College. His creative group is working on it. And then here in the States, I have James Lopez overseeing and working with the young animators, and he's training them a la the way Eric Larson and some of the 9 Old Men worked with the animators. And so they're doing some real good job. And what started out as a 14-minute 2D cartoon, the people at Heart Mountain Pilgrimage, or rather Foundation, wanted to extend it to 22 minutes, so it'll be commercially viable. So we had a budget for 14 minutes. So now I'm out there beating the bushes, getting fundraising, so we could complete it by next year in time for the pilgrimage, CTN, and whatever else. So
awesome, Willie.
But it's coming along, and we did run the 2-minute trailer at this past CTN, and it was well received. And the music that Carlos in Florence, Italy, original composition we wanted to get the essence of the big band sounds of the 40s and some of the popular Japanese tunes of that era. And he's doing such a great job. So got my fingers crossed.
Nice. We look forward to seeing that. Tom, final comments.
Well, I said, well, thank you very much, Keith, for putting this together and getting us all together. And this has been a lot of fun, and it's great reminiscing and talking with everybody. Yeah, I'd say like my message to, young people and all is that you have it a little more difficult than we do, than we did in that a lot of these great shorts that we were talking about were much more accessible. Like we would see them on television, or later on, it was easier to get a cassette with all the characters and all the shorts and everything. And a lot of that stuff isn't as immediately available. But the thing is, seek out this stuff. If you're going to learn your craft, learn your craft. I noticed, when a bunch of baseball players get together, professionals, they sit around and they talk about technique. They talk about, oh, Willie Stargell did it this way, and Tug McGraw had this way. You get a bunch of boxers together. Muhammad Ali could talk about the style of Jack Johnson, or Rocky Marciano. So if you're going to be a professional in this business, learn the professionals, learn their technique, and learn and build on it. The old saying about we can see far when we stand on the shoulders of giants. So.
Took it away from me. I was just going to say that. Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thank you, Tom. Bob.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Keith, for inviting. And it's so great to see so many dear friends. So, it's a pleasure to share this. I think about, when I talk to students, one of the things, or a couple of things I say is, first of all, find out who you are. You need to know who you are. You do that by not seeing everything your fellow students see. In other words, go see, like when I was teaching at Cal Arts and Chenard, I would say, look at foreign films, because so often students don't do it. Look at this, look at that. But one of the big things is question everything, get a critical mind. Don't just follow. When when a teacher says something, find out why it works. Don't just assume it works, because in doing that, you sort of teach yourself, and it means something. It's not just, interesting shapes, whatever that means. The other, which I do, which is pretty funny, and I know some of the instructors probably don't want to hear it. I tell them to get a life, so, experience, go out. And that's it. I mean, it's so strange. The people we're talking about all had lives. They had their own lives, their own viewpoint, and they're wonderfully talented and skilled. So anyway, get a life.
Get off the computer and get outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marv, I'll give you a minute here. Always got it.
Keith, thanks for inviting me, and allowing me to lay eyes on living Bob Kurtz once again, and kind of getting to know these other gentlemen who, Tom Sito, and who once again, I was in the same room with him, and a number of times, I'm sure. Eric, you're a legend, you know it. Willie, you're a legend, you know it. They say I'm a legend, but I'm not, and this is proof. I'm with the legends right now. So thanks, Keith. Thanks for you guys having me on board, and keep animating, everyone. Hey, hooray for 2D.
Yeah.
We'll give the last word to Eric.
Oh God, okay. Don't put any pressure on me or anything. But, since we're kind of addressing this to students, I think one thing that came out of our discussions today is that animation is such a broad medium of different techniques, different approaches, different styles. And critics and companies are very quick to do what I call blaming the paintbrush. In other words, if somebody makes a lousy painting, he's a lousy artist. You don't blame the paintbrush, So when a lousy CG film or a lousy 2D film comes out, people are quick to go, oh, 2D's dead now. Oh, CG, it's past its prime. No, you can make a good film with Rice Krispies on a light box. You can actually make great films in so many techniques in animation. We're talking about stop motion. There are so many ways that people can communicate. I would say, never fall for the blaming the paintbrush, because, there's just so many things that can be done in this medium to make a good film.
No, I agree with you in that regard. And I think there's too much emphasis, especially for students, on tools and the CG tools, and not enough on creativity. And I think when we look at these films, the individuals behind them, the creative minds, and that's really why they stand out and they stand the test of time. So it's been a pleasure having you all here for this afternoon. I think we have to keep this a regular round table. I'd love to do this on a regular basis. There's so many conversations we could have on animation, the state of film, and maybe, well, no, we'll keep away from politics and religion. But
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Keith.
Bye.